This is Amelia White Hedrick and Teresa White Barb talking to their mother, Amelia White.
Well, you started to say a while ago when you cut off about when you went to Wisconsin or somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You never did finish that.
Met Mama's half-brothers, but I don't remember their names because there wasn't, that's the first time we'd met them and all. But we did know Uncle Albert, Mama's only full-blood brother. And she had some half-sisters too, but I don't know their names.
But their last name was Grillott?
No. Francis was their last name. Mm-hmm. Mama's mother, her folks' name was Grillott. And so their name was Francis, the French Francis, Francois. That's the way it's spelled.
And this is in Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin. Mm-hmm.
What?
They're near Belleville, Wisconsin. They lived on a little farm just right at the edge of Belleville. Belleville's a town like Kingdom, I'd say. Not too big a town. And that's where most of their relatives were. And that's where Dad's folks were, Uncle Julien and Uncle Constance. They were both brothers of Dad. Gerard. And Uncle Julien's wife is Aunt Millie. And Uncle Constance's wife. Can't remember her last name. I bet Florence would remember it, though.
She would be a sister to Grandpa.
Yeah, she was a sister. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. How many brothers and sisters did your grandfather have?
This would be my dad.
Your father,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, just the two that I know of. I'm sure he had more than that. He had his oldest brothers. There was twin brothers that died in infancy. Whether they were still born or died shortly after, I don't know. But them two is the only ones I know of. And Uncle Julien just had the two girls, Philomene and Mary Elizabeth as their names. And Uncle Constance, they had 7 children. I just don't know all their names. We called one of them Dolly. They all had nicknames. But I don't remember them all now.
And Aunt Mary was the...
Yeah, Aunt Mary was a sister. Yeah, that was another to Grandpa. Mm-hmm. And she lived in northern Wisconsin. And Uncle Will was her husband. Demet is her last name. And they had several children, 6 or 8 or something like that.
Was his name William?
William. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't
William
realize
Demet. Mm-hmm. And there's some Demets out in western Kansas now that I often wondered if they were maybe some relative of them. But I don't know for sure. That's where...
Now, did Grandpa and Grandma Gerard's family, parents, both come from France to America?
Mm-hmm. But I don't know where from. Betty would know because she's got all that.
Were Grandpa and Grandma born in America, or were they born in France?
They were born here. That is in Wisconsin, I take it, because that's where they've always lived, both families. So I don't know, other than that.
But the grandparents were married in France and then moved to America?
Grandma Gerard was only 14 years old when Grandpa Gerard married her. Seemed like her father was blind, and he was worried. Her mother had died when she was an infant, and he was blind and worried him, afraid what had happened to her. So he gave consent to Grandpa Gerard to marry her and take care of her. And then after he died, they come to America then. And then my dad then was born there in Wisconsin. So, And Mama's, never knew too much about her folks. They just never did talk about them much. And,
Did she have brothers and sisters?
well, she had one full brother. But she had half sisters and half brothers, but I don't know how many because she never talked much about them. It's funny. Her brother lived in Iowa, in Iowa, because we stopped that trip we took to Wisconsin. We stopped there and stayed overnight with him. His wife was named Anna, and we were so fascinated by them because she sewed for people. She was what they called seamstress then, and she had all kinds of these wooden spools she'd saved, and Uncle Albert made all kinds of tables, stand tables and everything with those spools. He'd string it on a thing, for the legs, and he had some of the most beautiful things made out of spools, those wooden spools. Picture frames, everything. And other than that, he was the only one I really ever knew much about, They, like I said, she never did talk about her family much. And her dad was married, I think she was 19 when they got married. And then they went out to western Kansas, to Hamilton County. Was it Hamilton County? Sherman County.
From Wisconsin?
From Wisconsin in a covered wagon to Homestead out there. After they got married, they went out there. And Lewis was born there then. And they stuck it out till he was a year old, and there was no crops. It was a poor time, they didn't have nothing to live on. They just wasn't making it. And they both got homesick, so they just loaded the wagon back up and went back to Wisconsin.
And they farmed there?
Yeah, they farmed there and stayed in Wisconsin, I guess, because Felix and I'm not sure about Hubert. Felix was born in Wisconsin. And Hubert, I was born in Illinois, I'm pretty sure. Near Hancock, Illinois. That was the town.
That's where you were born?
Yeah, on a farm. He worked on a dairy farm then. And Dad told about it, how sick Mama was when I was born. Nearly died. He was milking 52 cows then, hand-milked, it wasn't like nowadays.
Where was Florence born?
She was born in Virginia.
How did you get from Illinois to Virginia?
Dad everything looked different, better across the pasture fence, so to speak. And somebody talked him into, this man, Lewis tells about it in his tape. Some man that he worked for went to Virginia. He was pretty wealthy and he could afford to go. And when he got there, he bought a place, and he talked Lewis into coming to farm this place in Virginia. Said the country is so nice and all that, So Dad ups and goes. We go. And
you went in a covered wagon again?
no, we went on the train that time.
Do you remember that?
No, because I wasn't very old. I wasn't old enough to, because that was before Florence was born, and I would have had to have been around 2 years old probably. But Lewis tells about it. He remembers it. And then Lewis got malaria fever there, because they lived right on the James River in Virginia. And he got malaria fever, and the doctor told him he'd die if they didn't take him away from there, go to a different climate. So they went to Maryland then. And we lived there a while. And I remember him talking about it. And I can remember it there. Florence was, 18 months old or so, crawling stage. She didn't walk too good yet. And the boys was picking cherries and cherry tree right behind the house, and there was a creek down there behind the house. And Mama was busy in the house and had told the boys to watch Florence, not let her get down there in that creek. Well, they was so busy picking cherries, they forgot her. And first thing we knew, we heard her screaming, and she got down in there and just about drowned. I can remember that yet. I can just see it. And so Dad put a fence up around there back of the house and after that, so she wouldn't get in there again. And then I don't know why he saw something in Missouri in an ad that he wanted to come to Missouri. Then we'd come on a train again to Missouri. He loaded the cattle and pigs and stuff like that, livestock, you know. Oh, they had a name for it. Lewis mentions it. A certain kind of car, and then of course we'd come on the train. And it cost them days, and yet it was hard times. People didn't have much money. He didn't have much money. Anyway, we got to Missouri, and then they had flood. He lived on what they call a bottomland farm. And the flood, I can remember that so well, too. Seeing Dad getting us, putting everything up on the kitchen table, the Mama's sewing machine and stuff up on top of it so it wouldn't be in the water, because they didn't think that water was going to get that high. And then they loaded all the bedding and clothes and things that they could put in this big lumber wagon, and the family took us out of there, and I can see the horses wading through that lots of water, and it was so swift, you know, just going out through the yard or through the place. And we stayed at a neighbor's then till the river went down. They went back then to see how things were, and well, everything had tipped over in the house. Everything got water soaked, and he even had meat, cured meat. Dad always butchered, you know, his hogs and kind of dry cured it some way, and that tipped over in the water too, and that was lost. Yeah, but he stuck it out and tried again, and then had the second flood in the same river, but not as bad. It didn't get in the house so bad. Then he got discouraged then, and saw an ad in the paper for a place in Kansas. I can't remember the name of it. Liz mentions it. Cassidy, I believe, was the name of it, because it sounded like Castleton when I heard him talk about it. And it sounded like a good idea to him, you know, and so we'd load up again and go
on the train.
On the train again. And this time, he didn't have no money, because, you know, 2 floods just took everything, and we all went in this big boxcar with the cattle and the feed and everything. And he made a place back in the corner, piled up bales, you know, so we could hide in there, because one wasn't supposed to ride in there, you know, it's against the law. But the brakeman was kind enough. He knew we was in there, but he didn't say anything. He knew Dad didn't have no money. So when he got to this place, he wrote to this man about the place, and when he got there, the tenant that was on before had already had his crop out, and he wouldn't release the place. So that threw Dad clear off. You know, he couldn't take it over then. He wouldn't let him have it. So Dad was really discouraged then. He just didn't know what to do. So he asked the train man if he'd take him on to Hutchinson then. He said, I'll sell some of this stock I've got here to pay the train fare if you'll just take us to Hutchinson. And we got there in South Hutchinson. Of course, there was nothing there then. Where the Kraus Plow Company is now, that's where we got off, right in there, off the train. And I can remember that, getting Dad unloading things, and he found a little house close there. Didn't cost too much. And he sold the pigs and paid off the train fare, you know, and he got a job right away. He could always get work. He'd worked in a coal mine and everything in Virginia. And then us kids started to school. We started there at Avenue A school.
How old were you then?
Well, I thought I was 6, but according to Lewis's records, I must have been older than that. He said we got to Hutchinson in 1912, so I'd had to be older than that. Florence says she remembers it, and So we had to be older than that. And anyway, I can't remember the years myself that well. And we went there 2 weeks to Avenue A School, which is still there now, only so much bigger. And of course the priest, we started church St. Teresa's, and when he found out that we was just new in town and all these kids, why he insisted we go up there to school. And of course Dad told him we couldn't afford tuition for the parochial school. He says, you don't have to pay tuition, just send those children up here. So we went up there then. We went 3 years to St. Teresa's.
How did you go? Did you
We
walk?
walked, it was quite a ways, but we walked. And then when we moved out to South Hutchinson, see, we lived out there. Well, Mama took us girls in the buggy, just to one horse buggy. And then we'd walk home. She'd take us in the morning. Yeah. But I remember that so well.
And that was what year?
That had to be 1912. Lewis says we got to Hutchinson 1912, so that would be about, well, from then on, 13 and 14, because we went there 3 years.
There was one thing I thought about a while ago. When was Lewis born? What year was Lewis born? Do you remember? Well, how old is he right now?
He's 80. 82, I think.
82.
Well, he was born same year Daddy was. We thought the same year, 1898. 1898, and we found out later that Daddy was born in 1897. We had him, the Modern Woodman had his birthday right.
Then there was Hubert.
Hubert's the youngest.
Oh,
Felix.
Felix.
Uh-huh.
And then what was his birthday, or how old was he?
Well, he'd be about 2 years younger than Lewis. Not quite 2 years, but around that. Right at 2 years, and Hubert about the same. And then there's 3 years difference between Hubert and I.
Okay,
And then there's 4 years between Florence and I.
And what year were you born?
1903.
3.
Florence in 1907.
1907. So that put you in Hutchinson in 1912?
I think,
Right
at least that's what Lewis has it.
So that put you, that was 7 years old, 8 years old?
Yeah, I must have been older than I thought I was just 6, but evidently I had to be older than that. But I hadn't gone to school yet. When when Lewis and Hubert started school, folks always talk French, to the boys, and they never knew anything else. Well, I guess us girls too, because when we was in Missouri there, in Illinois, whenever we went to school. And it was in Illinois when I was born. Lewis was telling about this. The teachers didn't like it because the boys didn't know English when they started school, and they made them stay home a year till they learned to talk English. The teachers wouldn't accept them in the school, and then they couldn't keep hard men. Dad had to have hard men milking all those cows, and he finally asked one of these guys why they quit like that. I mean, he didn't think he mistreated them or anything. He wanted to know why they didn't stay any longer. He says, it's because you don't talk English, and we think you're talking about us all the time, so they just didn't like it, and they quit. So that's when they started talking English, and of course dropped it, and us kids forgot all the French we ever knew. But we did know it at one time. Oh, too bad we couldn't have kept it up.
You were saying back earlier about Grandma Gerard having half sisters or brothers. What did her
mother died,
die?
and then her dad married again. But I don't even know her name. it is seems strange that we couldn't. I mean, she didn't ever talk about her folks, hardly at all, and we never knew nothing about them. And Betty couldn't find out much about them. There wasn't anybody left there that, you know, of that her side of the family.
How old was she when her real mother died? Was she real young, or was she?
She must have been pretty young. Her and Uncle Albert, her brother. She never did say that, and we never questioned. That's something you never did. You never questioned your mom in them days. Boy. No.
Well, how did she and Grandpa Gerard meet? Did they meet going to school, or did you?
I never knew that, and I never heard him talk about that. Could be church, too, you know, because they all was strict about church. They was always very religious. And I just don't know. Never did ask, as I say.
Well, all these places that you lived, then Grandpa just rented.
Yeah, he just never owned a place until he bought this in the castle. It was always rented.
And what about the one in Nickerson?
That was rented.
That was rented.
Yeah, after we lived there in Hutchinson, we moved to South Hutchinson, and Dad truck farm there in South Hutch. Almost the whole part of South Hutchinson, he rented a little lot here and there, and planted onions and potatoes and sweet potatoes, melons, everything you could think of. And he would peddle them, and he had what he called a spring wagon. He'd go all up and down streets in Hutchinson and peddle that stuff. And sold it too, because he always had it fixed nice, like his carrots would be washed and tied in bunches and everything. And us kids would have to plant the onions and pick potato bugs. I'll never forget picking potato bugs. Those long rows of potatoes, and we had a little can, like a corn can or something, or maybe a gallon can with a little bit of coal on the bottom of it. And we had to pick those off and drop them in the can, not on the ground, in the can. And we'd come back from a half a day's picking out there with a half a can of potato bugs. You know, they didn't have Paris green and stuff like that then to use on things. And then the onions, him and Lewis, he made a long board, probably 16 foot long or something like that. And he made holes in this boards. He had two of them fastened together, and he made holes, and then he made pegs. He whittled out pegs, mind you, and drove in those holes and had them tight so they stayed put. And him and Lewis would put them down the row and walk on them to make holes, and then the rest of us kids go down and drop the onions in there. And then him and Lewis would go and cover them up with a hoe, you know. That's the way we planted onions. We got a lot of them planted then. And Florence, I got tickled at her. She was listening to this. She thinks we put the onions through the hole in the board.
Oh.
That's a tickle there.
That would be hard.
That would be hard to do. But anyway, that's the way I remembered. We'd done a lot of that. Oh. You know, as kids, and we'd go out and pull weeds. We didn't do much hoeing because we were too little to handle a hoe, you know. We pulled weeds. Cockleburrs were the worst there in South Hutchinson. And we lived there over a year, I know, probably 2 years. And then Dad rented a farm out west of Hutchinson in East Eureka district. And we went to school a year or two there. It was a wheat farmland, you know. He farmed there.
Farmed the wheat.
Yeah, farmed just regular. He got a tractor by then and farmed this wheat garden. I can't remember the name of the man that owned the farm. Lewis tells them his day. And then he met this John Sutton man, and he's one that we got rented up in Salt Creek Township. That's 8 miles west of Hutchinson, up above Rails Hill. That's where the place was. and Salt Creek School was there. And we lived there then 2 years, and that's where Lois and Lois met. Because Lois's folks lived just half a mile west of us on a farm too, and they were, all our kids was home yet, and us, and we'd get together, on Sunday afternoon, and they'd walk up, and we'd have a lot of fun playing games together and all. And then they went to school, and Lois had graduated from high school by that time, and she didn't have nothing to do at home. People didn't babysit and things like that them days. So she just took I don't know what they call it, course to take the 8th grade over in school, and she'd walk to school with Effie then and Arthur, and they come right by our place, so we'd all go together then. It was, it's 2 miles from their place, 1.5 miles from ours, and that's how Lois and Lois met. They'd stop in. It was a cold morning, get warmed up, and we'd go to school together. And then when they got married then, John Sutton had bought the other half of that section, on the south half where we was living, and we moved in that big house then, and Lois and Lois lived in that little house where we was living. And then we lived there 2 or 3 years, and Dad bought this place at Castleton, and that's where
Were
I
you
met
out of
Tom.
school then by that time?
I never did finish school. Mama was sickly at that time. She just sick a lot. And always on wash day, I'd have to stay home and help her with the washing and ironing. And we had to do lots of ironing then. And anything like canning come up, I always had to stay home and help her. And I just lost interest in school. And of course, the folks didn't seem to think it was necessary,
How old were you then?
I was 17 when we moved to Castleton, and I hadn't even finished 8th grade. I started, but I never did finish. And I thought I was too old to go on to school. I could have, there at Castleton, very easily. But I just, lost interest. And sorry since that I didn't, because I could have went on through high school there,
What did Aunt Florence?
Yeah, she went on to school and finished 8th grade, and then she took 2 years of high school
At Castleton?
at Castleton. I think she took 2 years. Now, she may not have. She started, I know, and then she met Bob McDermott and married him. Of course, when she got married, she quit school, too.
Well, then, did you meet Dad through church?
Yeah,
Going
going
to
to church.
Was he in school? Was he still going to school?
No, he had finished
He
school.
graduated.
He had graduated. And see, Dukes was our closest neighbor right west there in Castle.
Well,
That farm in
where
Castle.
Stuckey's lived.
Yeah, where Stuckey's. And they were cousins.
Of Dad.
Kate Duke was his aunt, his mother's sister. And, of course, they was together a lot, and the Duke kids and Tommy and Ed would be together a lot. And they'd come to our place because the boys, they all got acquainted.
Well, now were Uncle Hubert and Uncle Felix still at home?
Yeah, they was still home.
But did they finish school?
No,
They
none
all
of them finished school. And Lewis, he only went as far as 6th grade.
Is that right? Well, were the boys just helping farm, or?
Yeah, they was helping Dad. He was farming quite a bit. He rented some land from Furstenberg's over east of the Highway 17 there. There was a whole section there he had rented. And, of course, they was helping farm. Dad had tractors for them.
Well, what did Dad do if he had graduated? He was just helping Grandpa White farm?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, where was the Gerard farm? I mean, where is it? Where, I never did
There
know
to Castleton?
Yeah, when you moved here.
Well, you know where that little bridge is you cross before you get to Highway 17?
Yeah.
Well, there's a barn there,
It burned down
and
a few years ago.
but there's still one standing there. There was
But the
two
house burned down.
barns and the house. I think
On
the
the
house.
north side of the road? Barn's still there?
Yeah, that hay barn's still there.
And that was the Gerard farm?
Yeah, That's where we were when I got married. And Felix too.
And
Felix.
then the Dukes just lived
That next,
just
her
that next
stickers.
house.
Yeah, we used to be back and forth with them and all because they were good neighbors, and they tried so hard to get me to go back to school. You know, but I don't know. I was bashful when I was a kid, and I just didn't want to. You know. Of course, Dad wouldn't insist because he thought, like he said, you just get married anyway while I go to school. Well, that was his attitude. So.
When you let's see, Louis got married first.
Yeah.
Then
Felix.
Felix.
So he
missed him
wasn't
somewhere.
living on the farm there at Castleton then,
Felix.
Uncle Felix. Or
Yeah, he was still home. Him and Marilyn got married when.
While you lived at Castleton.
Yeah, they got married the same year we did, in 1922. They got married in June in 1922, and we got married the 4th of October, 1922.
And Florence got married before you did?
No,
or
it was after
you.
1924 is when she got married. And Hubert got married along in there between that time. Him and Retta went to the courthouse and got married, and we never knew till after they was married.
Where did Uncle Felix's get married?
They got married at the priest's house in St. Teresa's.
And you got married after Uncle Felix?
Yeah.
Then? Then where were you married? You and Daddy?
St. Agnes Church. So that's been.
Oh, here in Castleton?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
really?
the church was already moved then when you
Yeah,
were married.
it was there, and we moved to Castleton. It had been for several years. And so that's all been home church to me because your kids was all baptized there and everything. Confirmation.
What year did you and Daddy get married in?
1922.
And where was it that they were living? Is that the White place where Ed lived now?
Yeah,
That
that was their home place. Yeah, Tommy was born in Newton, Kansas, but they moved there to that place before Edward was born and lived there ever since. So that's always been the White place.
Well, then Dad was farming on his own when you got married. I mean, he had a place of his own to farm, or did he still farm?
He's
at
still
home?
helping his dad, and we rented then. We didn't really have a place. He was just helping his dad, and I guess he got a share some way or something. And we lived where, it was called the Joe McGuire place, and Lee and Generals live there now.
Oh, that's where
That's
you
where
lived
our
when you-
the first year we was married, we lived there. We lived there for a year, and then he got to rent the Vessel place, west of Uncle Edward's there.
Where Rita Notice used to
Yeah.
live.
And we lived there then 6 years. Thomas and Dorothy was both born while we lived there. And then, we lost the baby while we was there too. And then we moved to Castleton, south of here.
Yeah, now let's back up just a second. Thomas and Dorothy were born on the Vessel place.
Yes,
And what year is Thomas born?
1923,
His birthday is what?
December the 7th,
And Dorothy's birthday is what?
May 25, 2 years, just about 2 years difference.
1925.
25, yeah.
And her birthday is what?
August the August 5th, is it, or 3rd?
No,
Oh.
our anniversary's the 3rd.
August the 5th, I guess.
Fifth, I think.
Yes.
It's the fifth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sixth.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it's the 5th.
And then you
Sixth.
lost a son,
Yeah.
and that was what
And-
year?
Dorothy would have been 2 years old, or 3 years old. So that would have been the, yeah.
1928.
Yeah.
Okay, then then as you go on, let's see, that would have been all the children that was born at the vessel?
Yes.
Okay, then as you start, now's the time that when you start moving, and as your children are born, give us the birthday and the date. So, when you move. So, I mean, we know it.
Yeah. My trouble, I don't remember those dates so good.
Well, they can help you.
How did you happen to move up here to Castleton?
Well, Grandpa White bought this farm, and Tommy was supposed to take it over, and from there. But we couldn't make it. We lost it. We
The one
lived
just
there.
south
Yeah.
Mm.
And just crops were poor and everything. We just barely made a living,
Is that where you lived when I was born?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. You and Pat. You'd be 7 years younger than Dorothy. I can't remember the date.
I was born in 1932.
1932.
July the 5th.
July the 5th. Well, Pat then would be born
In 34.
34.
July the 21st.
July the 21st, yeah.
And what did they call that place when you moved on to it?
That was the John Smith place. Uncle John Smith. He was a brother to Grandma White. Frances White. That'd be Tommy's mother. Yeah.
How long did we live there? How long, when we moved there, how long old were Dorothy and Thomas?
Well, they both started to school. Thomas was 7. We held him back. We didn't start him over there at the little country school because we knew he was going to move on this place. And we just held him, kept him home. He was sort of small and, not as forward in learning as children are nowadays, it seems like. So we waited till we moved to Castleton and sent him to school to Castleton. And him and Dorothy started at the same time. And that was born 2 years after you.
How long did we live on that place? How long?
Until Teresa was born. We moved up here in just about 2 weeks before she was born. In August, we were supposed to take possession of this place, 1st of August. And she was born on the 21st. In 37. Well, that's been...
So how many years would have you been there?
10 years, I'd say. I'd have to count it up. I'm not good at remembering dates and time like Liz is, I'll tell you. He's got a memory like...
Well then, did Dad buy this place?
No, this was an inheritance. Uncle Tone.
Oh, that's right.
Uncle Tone willed it to him. There was a lot of hassle over it. I still think that started Daddy's heart trouble. There was a lot of bitterness because Uncle Tone, well, like the Dukes, thought he was partial to Tommy. Well, Tommy, anytime he wanted somebody to haul hay for him for his cattle, he'd drop what he was doing and come and haul it. Well, nobody else would do that for him. They'd turn him down, see.
Now, he was a brother to Grandma White.
So, Uncle Tone just took such a liking to him that he willed this place to him.
And this Uncle Tone was a bachelor?
Yeah. And then he had a sister alive yet, Aunt Mary. She couldn't talk or,
she couldn't hear.
No.
She couldn't hear.
She couldn't talk or hear. But she was a wonderful cook and all, she kept washed for him. Of course, she washed on the board then, but still she done it and done a good job of it. And they just got along fine, but when she got older, then her health gave way. And Grandma White then come up and stayed with her when she got pretty bad. And of course Grandpa White come too, and she had died then, and Grandma was still here staying with Uncle Tone, and she wanted me to come up and make her some currant pies that day. He was only 6 months old at the time. That we still lived down there then. And I come up and I don't know who picked the currants, but anyway, Uncle Tone had them picked. And I was there at the kitchen table with that old north window in Francis' kitchen at the time, making those pies, and Grandpa, she was holding you, Grandma was. And Grandpa hollered at me and says, "Millie, I think Grandma's dying." And of course it scared me. I had flour all over me, and I turned around and took you and put you back in the buggy and grabbed her so she wouldn't fall off the chair. And she did die right then and there. She had a heart attack. And we got her, well, Thomas and Dorothy, of course, was playing outside, and they come in, and Uncle Tone, or Grandpa told Thomas to go tell Uncle Tone to come in quick. We needed him, and he was out pumping water. There used to be a pump out there by the little chicken house, and he was pumping water for his calves. And he wouldn't come in. He thought it was just kid talk. He just wouldn't come in for quite a while. And Thomas come in and said he wouldn't come, and Grandpa sent him out again. And of course, the time he got in, then we put her in on the couch. I was afraid to turn loose over because I knew she'd fall. And we got her in on the couch and then called the priest and the doctor. But she was gone. I know she was gone right away.
Had she been sick?
She had had what we thought was a stroke before that. She hadn't been feeling good. And that was the reason Uncle Tom wanted her to stay here a while.
Was Grandpa staying with her up here?
Yeah, They was both staying. Edward and Dorothy was married at the time, you know. And they was there on the place. They lived there. She just went that quick. And
This you're talking about Tom's mom.
yeah.
What was her name before she was married?
Frances Smith. This place was the original Smith home.
This was where she grew
Where
up.
she grew up.
Uncle Tone.
Uncle Tone and Aunt Kate and Phil. There was quite a bunch of boys.
Is that
TP? Well, it's TP's. It'd be TP's grandparents. Yeah. TP's dad was her brother. Was Grandma White's brother.
His name was John? No.
No, his name was, let's see, it was Phil, John. Lawrence was his name. And he lived over there in that place that used to be there south of TP. That's where their home place was.
Well, then how long did Uncle Tone, if Aunt, her name was Aunt Mary?
Yeah.
She had died, and that's why Grandma and Grandpa were up here.
Yes.
Then did he live alone here?
Yeah,
after
he
that?
stayed alone there for quite a while.
Grandpa White went back to the...
Yeah.
Was he able to take care of himself, or did you have to help?
Well, he stayed there with Dorothy and Ed, and, you know.
No, I mean Uncle Tone.
Oh, we'd come up and look after him and do for him, and I'd do his washing and everything. And that's how Dukes, they said we did all these things to get on the good side of him. Well, we never dreamed of such a thing. You know, you never thought of things like that. You just thought of helping somebody that needed help. That was our only thoughts. Never entered our minds that he'd ever will a place to Tommy like that. And now it raised such a hassle.
Did he die suddenly like Grandma White?
You know, that part I don't remember. Isn't it funny? And I should.
You don't know if he died here at home or if he was in the hospital?
I think he finally ended up having to go to the hospital for a little while, but I'm not sure about that. And I don't know who would know. Now, Dale might know, because Dale was good to help him out, too. Dale does.
Mm-hmm.
He willed that 80 south of the to him. He owned that one too.
He's south of the cemetery.
Yeah. Or south of the road.
Parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One that Dale still got.
No, he sold it quite a
Did he
while ago.
sell it?
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Yeah, he owned that too. And Dale farmed it for years before he even knew he had it, But in the will, it was willed to him. But Dale was like Tommy. He'd do anything Uncle Tone asked him to, he'd do it.
Mm-hmm.
Help him out, Anything he needed fixed around the place here, he'd come and fix it. Like Pastor Spence needed fixing, he'd fix it. And, things like that. And Dale was like us. He never entered his head that it was for a reason like they put it. It was just because he thought a lot of Uncle Tone, and he helped him out when he needed help. So that's the way things went. You could really go through a lot of things. Yeah.
Well, then you moved up here.
It'd be the year Teresa was born.
Your Teresa was born.
Because she was born here.
Had this place been empty for a while? Uncle Tone died?
Yeah.
Several
For about a
years.
year, well, maybe 2 or 3 years. Anyway, it was awful dirty because they had a coal oil stove. And took a lot of cleaning to clean it even livable. And,
Well, did you move from this place here to here?
yes.
You were still on this farm.
Yeah.
You said something about you had some poor crops and they lost this farm.
Yeah, we lost the farm. I'm sure that's what happened. Just couldn't make it.
But you were still living there.
Yeah.
Up until the time I moved here.
Yeah. It just went back to the farmer owner, and he just rented it,
But you continued to live on it.
Yeah.
You didn't I see.
Yeah, didn't own it anymore. And then we moved up here then, and things got a little better, but not much. I don't know why some people just can't make it, but they don't. And then Elaine was born here.
Francie first.
Oh yeah, Francie.
More than 39, I think.
Let's see, we missed your birthday too.
37. No, I think August 21st.
August
1937.
And Francie. About 2 years after that one. So Dorothy's birthday has to be July the 6th. Yours is the 5th.
No, Dorothy's is in August. August 6th,
August
I think.
6th.
Is Dorothy's.
And Francis, July the 5th.
Hers is the 6th. Mine's
Well,
the 5th. I remember a little bit about when Francie was born. I remember having a surprise birthday party, and I think she was born she was born the next day.
Yeah,
I can remember I'd been playing, and you told me to go in the other room or something. We were probably playing paper dolls.
Yeah.
And all these kids come in.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that now that you mentioned.
I don't know why I connect the two together, but I remember them the next day. In a big system.
Yeah, along about 3 o'clock in the night, we had to go to town. It was raining cats and dogs, and the car drowned it out on the way to town to go to the hospital. And Tommy went to this house and called the doctor, and he said he would come out after us. The car drowned it out, so he couldn't go, And this man heard him talking to the doctor, and he said, well, I'll take you in. He said, no need the doctor coming out. So he was kind enough to take us to the hospital. And,
Then he stayed with us when we were in the hospital.
think Mrs. Donlinger did. Because she stayed with us the time we had typhoid fever. And we'd call on her every once in a while to stay with you kids.
I remember. I can remember her being there when we lived. That would be on the south place.
Yes. Yeah, she was awfully good to stay.
I can remember coming down. I remember one time, I don't know how old I would have been, but I'd gotten sick in the middle of the night. Probably must have vomited in bed. But I was afraid to come down and tell her.
Oh.
Because I didn't want her to know that I'd made a mess in the bed. I can remember the stairway, the railing around. Wasn't there a railing around the stairway, maybe?
Not that house. It just comes straight down, sort of like that when you live south of Pretty Prairie, just straight down. Anyway, we got to the hospital in time.
And did you accept who was your landlord? Did you get that?
January the 24th. I think she was in 46, wasn't she?
Yeah, because Thomas was overseas then. He was over in Germany when she was born. In service. In World War II.
Pretty close, because she was pretty small when I first saw her. At 49.
Is that? Now, you was married in 1950, wasn't it? So I also did remember that.
Going back to the time when you mentioned typhoid fever, what year was that, and who of you had it?
Thomas and Dorothy and I had it, and Mary Lou was a baby then. In fact, I was still nursing her, and of course had to wean her because I got so sick, and she had a little bit of touch on it about it. Mrs. Donner took good care of her though, and she, come out of being a baby. She hadn't got enough to hurt. But I guess Dorothy and I nearly died when we got to the hospital. Sister, can't remember that sister's name. I thought I'd never forget it. She was so good to us. And she really thought we'd pull through.
How long had you been sick before you knew that's what it was?
Well, Thomas didn't have it too bad, but Dorothy was pretty sick and bad. And we didn't have no idea what was wrong, and we called Dr. Anscombe. And the minute he got there and took her temperature and asked a few questions, he said, it's typhoid fever. So he said, we got to take her to the hospital right away. And so Daddy took her in right away. And I wasn't able to leave you kids, so I stayed home. But I didn't feel good. I felt I was having chills and I was sick. Starting to get sick then, and I had bedclothes I was washing out. And I couldn't hardly make a go of it, I just thought I couldn't get those things washed out enough to run them through the machine,
But you hadn't told the doctor you...
No, I didn't just tell him I'd feel bad because I didn't realize I had, I was so worried about her because she was so sick. And then when we had to take her to the hospital, that was double worry because them days you didn't go to the hospital unless she was awful bad. And then when Tommy came home and said, the doctor said she had typhoid fever, then we didn't know what to do, There was nothing we could do, only rely on the doctors to take her out of it. Those sisters were so good. And they isolated us too, nobody could go in that room but the nurses, the ones that took care of us, and the sister. And we was for 10 days.
Well, then when did you go to the hospital?
Just a day or two after that. And we were in the same room. They put us in the same room, so keep us together. And then Thomas was in the room right next to us, and I never did know he was in the hospital until afterwards.
He went after
and
you?
he went after we had, but he got to come home first because he wasn't very bad.
And Dad never did have it?
Never did get it. And we never could figure out. Everybody was so concerned why we had it. We'd had a rainy spring, sort of like this last year was. And our garden was right there by the windmill, and the overflow of the tank would water the garden. And we had a strawberry patch out there, and I don't know whether maybe overflow off of the pasture or what done it. We kind of thought that the zap might have done it. But they had everything tested. They had the water tested. And I used to can meat then, and chickens, and they had all that stuff tested, jar after jar. And everything was all right. But we never could figure out where we got it. Nobody else in the country had it. But we come so near.
Usually comes from water supply.
Well, that's what they thought. It was from water supply, and that's the reason they had the well tested. And the well itself was all right, but see, our garden stuff, and probably didn't wash it enough, having that overflow of so much rainwater going down across the garden like it does sometimes. And we figured that must have been what done it later on, where we got thinking about it. But that was an experience I'll never forget. We got so weak. We just had to learn to walk over again, Dorothy and I. We couldn't walk when we got home and got to where we could get up. We just had to learn all over again. And I got so thin, I guess I weighed less than 100 pounds at that time. And she took her a long time to get over it, but when she did, she come out of it good.
So Mrs. Downing helped
Yeah, she stayed all that summer with us. It happened in the spring when we had garden stuff. I don't remember what month it was, but it was in the spring. She stayed all that time. It was so good. I'm run down, Bryce. I can't think anymore.
Well, I mean, that brings me up to where I can start.
Yeah, where when you met Mary and all. Right.
And by that time, Thomas is married.
Yeah.
They have Julien.
Elise and Bob.
Did they have
All three of them.
I get it.
When they come back to Kansas, when they got everyone after they come back here.
I don't remember. I guess they didn't kill it.
Yeah, wasn't that right? I didn't come back there.
Yeah, because there wasn't
Bob
able.
was a tiny baby.
Oh, maybe
And they wasn't able to come.
that pretty well thing to get. It's going to run that tape out there. This one.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Now, Tom died when?
1958. June the 5th. You had been here on your vacation from Salina. And was it Kinsley? And had just gone back home, not very long.
Just a day or two.
I know it wasn't very many days, and he just went sudden that day.
Yeah, we fixed a tire on the front end of the tractor.
He was so happy about that because he could drive that tractor and fix that piece of ground, get that feed in. That was the little feed patch was.
Across the creek.
No, he wanted to get that feed planted, and he was so happy because he done that. But he just overdid. He went over to get the harrow. Had to go around over there near Two Peace Place, but he had to go around the creek to get over there. And coming out of that field, and he just run right into the across the road there by Albert Lewis's, and just run down that tree road. And the trees is what stopped the tractor. It was running, but couldn't go because it was up against a tree.
Now, Tom and Juanita had moved back here by the...
Yeah. No, they were still in Illinois. Because they come back to... I think. Or was they now? Or was he still at working at Johnson's?
Well, he wasn't working
No.
at Johnson's, but Daddy died the year that Tom and Cindy were born, because Marilyn and I were both real pregnant, because Tom was born the 1st of July.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Thomas will go back here.
I apologize for the noise on the tape. I couldn't get the voices up high enough to listen to properly, and I picked up too much background noise.